Public Concern for Governance Trust is a registered trust founded in 2002 by Mr. Julio Ribeiro, Dr. R.K. Anand, and late Mr. B.G. Deshmukh to increase public participation and activism towards creating a more transparent and efficient government system. In order to sensitize and mentor the youth in ethical values with emphasis on good governance, PCGT started the Youth for Governance program in 2012. PCGT organized its maiden edition of the National Youth Parliament last year, 2019. And now we're back again with PCGT National Youth Parliament 2020. This year, PCGT National Youth Parliament is an association of Praveen Gandhi College of Law, Mumbai. It is our privilege and honor to have Honorable Justice Madan B. Lokur as our chief guest. Honorable Justice Madan B. Lokur graduated in history from St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi, and obtained his law degree from Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. He enrolled as an advocate in July 1977 and practiced in the Delhi High Court and Supreme Court. Sir then became an advocate on record in the Supreme Court in 1981 and was designated senior advocate in 1977. He was appointed Additional Solicitor General in 1998 and continued in that position until February 1999, when he became an additional judge of the Delhi High Court and made a permanent judge in July that year. Sir was later appointed as the Chief Justice of the Guwahati High Court as well as the Andhra Pradesh High Court. Honorable Justice Lokur was elevated to the Supreme Court of India on June 4, 2012 and retired on December 31, 2018 after tenure of more than 6 years. He was the presiding judge of the Social Justice Bench and exclusively heard public interest petitions primarily related to socio-economic matters. Sir was responsible for giving an impetus to human rights jurisprudence, covering the right to food, shelter, health, dignity, and livelihood. Honorable Justice Lokur is lauded for his work in protecting the Aravalli Hills, the Taj Mahal, and hauling up industries for large-scale pollution. Sir is now a judge of the non-resident panel of the Supreme Court of PG. This is for the first time that an Indian has been appointed to the Supreme Court of another country. I now request Honorable Justice Madan B. Lokur to speak to us. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Bianca. And good evening to everybody. It's a great opportunity for which I must thank the trustees of the PCG Trust, the faculty of various colleges, and of course the honorable members of the National Youth Parliament to have been given this opportunity of sharing some thoughts, some views on some aspects that are current in today's discussions across the country. I would like to speak to you about constitutional morality, since well, a majority of you are parliamentarians. I would like to speak to you a little bit about constitutional morality and what can you as young leaders, as youth leaders, do for the country in the future. I think that is very, very important. And hopefully I should be able to generate a few ideas that you can take forward. I would like to begin with the Constituent Assembly debates. Now, they took place over a considerable period of time, more than a year. They had a very large number of sessions. They debated, discussed various provisions of the Constitution, and eventually established a secular, democratic republic. What I found very interesting while going through the debates of the Constituent Assembly in particular, what I saw today while preparing for today's event, is that none of the clauses were actually voted upon. They were discussed, they were debated, and it's not that some people had one particular point of view, another set of people had another point of view, and then eventually there was a vote, and it was decided that, well, one particular interpretation should be accepted. It was not like that. So in a sense, it was unanimously agreed that these are going to be the provisions of the constitution, and this is going to be the language that is going to be used in the constitution, the words that are going to be used in the constitution. So it's a very interesting facet of our history. Now, the preamble to the constitution, to my mind, actually gives the spirit and the vision of the constitution. So when it talks about justice, that is social, economic, and political, very, very important. It talks about liberty, liberty of thought, liberty of expression. It talks about equality, that is equality of opportunity, equality of status. I mean, nobody is less important than anybody else. That's a very important aspect of the dignity of every human being. And it talks about fraternity. So this is really the underlying philosophy and the underlying vision of the Constitution. This is what our Constitution makers wanted India to become: a social democratic republic where you have justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Now, I will just quote to you what Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the President of the Constituent Assembly, said in his speech on 26th of November, 1949. He said, "It is not possible to devise any yardstick for measuring the moral qualities of a man. And so long as that is not possible, our constitution will remain defective." So the emphasis was on moral qualities. Of course, you can't define that. You can't say that, well, this act is immoral, that act is not immoral. Somebody may have one particular point of view, another person may have another point of view. But the emphasis was on constitutional morality. That is what was sought to be emphasized by Dr. Rajendra Prasad, not on personal morality, but on constitutional morality. And Dr. Ambedkar had said a little earlier in 1948 that constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. It has to be cultivated. We must realize that our people have yet to learn it. So constitutional morality, although it took birth sometime in 1948, 49, 50, and so on, we are still discussing what is constitutional morality. And I think that discussion is very, very important because of the times that we are going through at the moment. I would like to speak about the three pillars of democracy. That is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. I would also like to speak a little bit about the silences in our constitution. Now, the constitution, cannot be like a standard operating procedure, where you have everything written down. It's not possible. That's not the purpose of a constitution. The purpose of a constitution is really to lay down the policy, the manner of governance. How do we govern the country? Or if it's an institution, how do we govern the institution, the administrative issues, and so on. But there are always gaps which have to be filled up, and which have to be filled up by persons who are responsible for the administration of the institution. You will remember that the United Kingdom does not have a constitution. There's no written constitution in the United Kingdom at all. But they are working on conventions. And those conventions have been developed, over a couple of decades, hundreds of years in some cases. So really, even if there are these gaps in the constitution or silences in the constitution as they are sometimes called, those gaps, those silences have to be filled up by what is called constitutional morality. Am I doing the right thing? What is the right thing to do in a certain situation where there is a gap? That is the question that all of us have to ask, whether we belong to the legislature, whether we belong to the executive, whether we belong to the judiciary. Everything, like I said, cannot be laid down. So those gaps have to be filled up through the process of constitutional morality. That is what I think is important, and that is what I would like to address you on, and how you can help, as young parliamentarians and the future of our country in filling up those gaps and those silences. Now, when we talk about the legislature, why do people stand for elections? They want to do something for their constituency. Some people decide to stand as independent candidates, individuals, but a majority of them belong to a political party or to a political grouping. Now, that grouping has a particular philosophy. They want to do something in a particular manner, and that is reflected in their manifesto. What do they want to do? It's there in their manifesto. How do they hope to achieve it? That's also there in their manifesto. There could be instances where on a particular issue, the manifesto will contain maybe 10, 15, 20, such programs or ideas or thoughts or concepts. But there may be one or two where a member of a political party who gets elected to the legislature, whether it is parliament or whether it is a state legislature, may have a disagreement. That, all right, the philosophy of the party or the program of the party is to achieve a particular objective. I don't think I agree with that. By and large, I agree with 9 other things that the party has in mind, but this one particular thing, I do not agree with it. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There can always be discussion, dialogue, debate, and the party can perhaps change its views. But the view of the majority has to be accepted. So if the majority feels that a particular thing has to be done and it has to be done in a particular manner, one person on one issue, or maybe a group of persons on one issue, cannot say, well, we don't agree, so therefore we are going to break away from the party and set up either our own party or join some other party. And, the party to which we belong, we stop owing allegiance. Now, there are, problems that would arise. One is that a person has got elected on a particular platform. He or she is representing the constituency on that particular platform. That person has got no business to start changing, the views of, the electorate which has elected him, and come up with something totally different, abandon the party, abandon the philosophy, abandon everything, and say that, well, I'm going to stake out entirely on my own. It is to prevent this from happening, and which was happening, by the way, pretty frequently in the 70s. There was this expression called Ayaram and Gayaram. So a person, would, in the morning, he would support one party. In the evening, he would support another party. The next day, he would support a third party or come back to the original party. So this Ayaram, Gayaram sort of a syndrome, it was decided that, we have to put a stop to it. And that's how the anti-defection law was enacted. If constitutional morality had prevailed, there would perhaps, in my view, be no need for an anti-defection law. I have got elected on a particular platform from a particular party. I may have different views on particular subjects, but the philosophy is the same. Where is the question of my defecting and going to some other party, perhaps a party which has a completely opposite point of view? That is what constitutional morality is all about. And when Mr. Ribeiro talked about corruption, I think this is an aggravated form of corruption where you do not have constitutional morality. It's you're doing something immoral. It's not corruption in the sense of taking money or giving money, but it's corruption of the mind where you're giving up what you had stood for, what you had got elected on. But anyway, be that as it may, the anti-defection law became a part of the constitution, part of the 10th schedule of the constitution. But today, what do we see? Today, we see in different legislatures what the Supreme Court, I'm not saying it, it's the Supreme Court that has used this expression horse trading, where members of a legislature are being persuaded, perhaps through money power, perhaps through other means, inducements, to join my party, I'll make you a minister kind of thing. It could be anything, in any form of corruption, not necessarily money. To give up your party, to give up your philosophy, and forget about constitutional morality. Join my party, and I will take care of you. In what manner is a different issue, but that's what is being offered, and that's what horse trading is all about. And that's where constitutional morality comes in. Is that person, is that legislator, to whichever party he or she belongs, to whichever state he or she belongs, and we have seen this happening in not one state, but in maybe 6-7 states. Are these people acting in accordance with constitutional morality, which Dr. Rajendra Prasad had talked about? Are they acting with constitutional morality, which Dr. Ambedkar had talked about? Are they doing what the Constitution requires them to do, what the preamble to the Constitution requires them to do? The vision, the spirit underlying the preamble? That is an area that we need to think about. And how do we inculcate this constitutional morality? I think it's up to people like you, the National Youth Parliamentarians, to instill this feeling in our elected representatives at whatever level. It may be at a municipal level, it may be at a panchayat level, it may be at the national level, that there are certain conventions that we have to adhere to. And those conventions can be built up over a period of time. And once they stand the test of time, then you don't need these, anti-defection kind of amendments, because you will be compelled to do the right thing. That is what is important. The second pillar of democracy is the executive. What is the role of the executive? The executive is supposed to implement the laws made by the legislature. That is their role, that's their job. And constitutional morality requires them to do their job. No person can say, no government servant can say that, listen, I am here in the government only to enjoy, to get a salary, to get leave, enjoy the perks. I'm not here to work. I don't think any person can say that. So this is another aspect of constitutional morality, of being, of doing the job that you have been entrusted with. Unfortunately, there are a very large number of areas where I believe the executive has failed us, in the sense that it has not implemented the laws as enacted by Parliament. What is the spirit of the law that has been enacted by Parliament? What is the spirit of the Food Security Act to ensure that food is available to everybody? What is the spirit of the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act? To provide employment to everybody in the rural areas, at least for a minimum of 100 days. What is the spirit behind the act which provides for old age homes, Senior Citizens Act? To have shelter for old age, for persons who are of an old age, so that they can live their life in dignity. Today's newspaper, if you have a look, a large number of persons staying in one particular old age home, horrible conditions, no life of dignity, and worse, some of them have become COVID positive. How did that happen? Were the people who were in charge not looking after the old age home? Were the people in charge not concerned about these old age people? What about the administrators, the executive? Was it not their duty to see that these old age homes are maintained properly? A few years ago, we had this really horrible case from Muzaffarpur, where a shelter home for girls, 34 girls over there were being sexually abused day in and day out. How is it that the police did not know that all this was going on? People in the neighborhood said we used to hear screams of these young girls, but we didn't have the courage to report it to the police. Why is that? Are people scared of the police? Are they scared that the police will not work because the persons who are running that shelter home are influential people? And by the way, they were influential people. One of them concerned was a minister in the cabinet of the state. Now, when these kind of things happen, then you begin to ask that is the executive implementing the law as it should be implementing the law? Are they doing the right thing? What is constitutional morality so far as the executive is concerned? Is it not their job to ensure that whatever laws are enacted by parliament, whatever laws are enacted by the state legislature, by the majority of the people of the country or of the state, should be implemented faithfully? Again, these are questions that you need to ask. You have issues of police excesses. How often do we read that an accused person was trying to escape, he was trying to run away? Maybe he tried to steal the, forcefully take away the gun, pistol of a policeman. And so therefore he was shot dead. We've had instances of this in Hyderabad. Recently we've had an instance of this in some other place in UP. We've had instances of, custodial deaths. We've had instances of, police beating up people. So it doesn't matter which branch of the executive you come from, whether you're in the administrative branch or whether you're in the police. There are also all kinds of allegations being made against some of the authorities like the Enforcement Directorate and Income Tax Department and so on, CBI. They're being used for political purposes. This is where, morality issues come in. Are you doing what you should be doing? That is, I think, the important question that has to be asked. I can give you, a very large number of examples. Food security, I had told you. Rural employment guarantee, I've told you. Old age citizens, young children, widows in Vrindavan, not living a life of dignity. The Supreme Court had to interfere and say that, listen, they are also entitled to a life of dignity. Please give it to them. The judiciary, that's the third pillar of democracy. I believe that the judiciary has to come out of the ivory tower. It has been in the ivory tower for a very, very long time. And I think the time has now come to come out of that ivory tower. Judges are also members of society. They cannot say, no judge can say that, listen, I'm going to sit in an ivory tower. What happens somewhere else is none of my business. I think we have gone far beyond that. And that is what public interest litigation is all about. Where you have the downtrodden, where you have the marginalized sections of society, where you have the poor, where you have bonded labor, persons who have no access to justice. How are they going to get justice? If the judges say that, well, we are going to sit in an ivory tower and it's the job of the legislature or it's the job of the executive, I have nothing to do with it. So what if there's bonded labor? I don't think any judge can say that. So what if there's sexual exploitation of young girls in a shelter home? Not my business. I don't think anybody can say that. So the judiciary, which is the third pillar of democracy, also has a responsibility under the category of constitutional morality. This, I believe, is the philosophy behind public interest litigation. And this is what impels the judges, the courts, to provide social justice. You have issues galore, trafficking of people. 30th of July was World Day against trafficking in persons. 70% of the persons who are trafficked across the world, and I think the figure might very well be the same for India, are women and girls. Why are they being trafficked? I don't think it requires too much of imagination to figure out why they're being trafficked. You have persons working, children working as laborers in hazardous industries, prohibited by law, but they're there. So you have a whole set of these problems, but the idea is that how do we overcome them? I mean, we can keep talking about these kind of ideas, but ultimately, I think it is for you as young parliamentarians, as young citizens of our country, to ask yourself one question, which I think is very important and which has been put across the world by persons who are involved in jurisprudence. What is the right thing to do? Given a particular situation, what is the right thing to do? Ask yourself that question. That is what constitutional morality is all about. Once you're able to get that answer, and once many people like you are able to get that answer and realize that you have to live with your conscience, with your morality, that's when conventions get built up. That's when traditions get built up. And then whether you have a written constitution or you don't have a written constitution, it doesn't matter. Because you are doing the right thing. And for whom are you doing the right thing? You're not doing the right thing for yourself. You're doing the right thing for the country. That is what is important. You have to remember that ours is a welfare state. What does that mean? It means that the state is there for the welfare of the people. The leaders are not there for their own welfare. They are there for the welfare of the people. They are the instruments of the state to provide welfare to the people. That is important. And how can you provide welfare for the people? If you obey the law, if you obey the constitution, if you believe in the preamble to the constitution, if you believe in the vision of the constitution, if you believe in the spirit of the constitution, the spirit of the laws that are enacted, laws are not unconstitutional. I mean, they are in furtherance of the constitution. Of course, there may be some law here or there which is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court will strike it down, or the High Court will strike it down as being unconstitutional. But out of thousands of laws that have been enacted, you will find it difficult to even come across 100 laws that have been declared as unconstitutional. Why is that? That is because Parliament or the state legislature is enacting laws in furtherance of constitutional principles. Once you realize that, and I'm very glad from whatever has been said today by Mr. Rivero and by Mr. Raja, that you have had these committees discussed very important issues. You have discussed the environment. Climate change is today bothering the entire world. You have discussed the agrarian crisis. You have discussed issues of education. That is what is important. Not whether I should join one party or I should join another party. That's not what is important. There are problems facing every country. I mean, India is not the only country which has problems. Pandemic has hit across the world, but apart from the pandemic, there are other problems, economic problems. You have discussed that. So the direction is already there. The direction you have chosen, the direction that you are following. All that you need to do is continue with that. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. And let me tell you, you cannot be the loser. How can you lose? I mean, if you're doing something good for the country, there's no way that you can lose. Right? So that is what you need to appreciate. That you have a constitution, you have laws, you have yourself and others like you who are representing the country in different spheres, in different disciplines. I have an interest in environment. I have no interest in agrarian crisis. You have an interest in education. You have no interest in the environment. Fine. That's perfectly okay. So you are doing things in an area that you believe is important. As long as it's good for the country, please go ahead. And I must say that from whatever I've been told today, whatever all of you have heard, Mr. Raja, Mr. Ribeiro, and others, I think you have done an excellent job and you must continue. I just want to end with one a thought that was given by Dr. Rajendra Prasad in his closing address to the Constituent Assembly. He said, and this is very important, he said, if the people who are elected are capable and men of character and integrity, I would say men and women, of character and integrity, they would be able to make the best even of a defective constitution. Now that defect, if you remember, Dr. Rajendra Prasad had mentioned about moral qualities. They would be able to make the best even of a defective constitution. If they are lacking in these, the constitution cannot help the country. After all, a constitution, like a machine, is a lifeless thing. It acquires life because of the men who control it and operate it. I would say men and women who control it and operate it. And India needs today nothing more than a set of honest men and women who will have the interest of the country before them. Dr. Rajendra Prasad said this in November 1949. The words are true even today. Even today, India needs nothing more than a set of honest men and women who will have the interest of the country before them. I'm confident that you are the leaders of tomorrow. And please do the right thing. Keep the Constitution in mind, and I'm sure we will succeed in whatever our Constituent Assembly had wanted us to achieve. Thank you very much, and all the best to all of you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights. We believe that the importance of constitutional morality, the silences in the Indian Constitution, and importance of inclusive legislature will benefit us in the long run. Sir, as you mentioned, that preamble is a spirit of the Constitution, and as an extension to this, we at PCGT believe that the youth of this country, when provided with appropriate opportunities, bring to life this spirit and make true the vision of the Constitution makers.